Welcome to our CA Football 12 Teams and 12-Day Season Preview. Today we check in on the Maine Black Bears, and to help us and provide some expert analysis is the play-by-play voice of the Black Bears, Rich Kimball. Thanks for joining us, Rich.
Rob, it's great to be with you. It's great to be talking football again.
Yes, it is. That's for sure. Before we start talking about this fall, let's look back on last spring. Maine only got 4 games in, but a 2-2 mark and showed some flashes. What, if anything, do you think from last spring that they can take into the fall season?
Well, it was interesting because it felt like the Black Bears were just kind of getting into their groove when the season was shut down because other teams had COVID issues and couldn't play. So I think it was really useful for the Black Bears, almost like an extended spring season in many ways, and especially with a lot of the young guys on the roster, really gave them a chance to try some people out. I think especially at the running back position where they had a lot of question marks, and they certainly saw some good things out of a number of guys, but I think especially Freddie Brock, who had 165 yards in the 4 games, but averaged almost 6 yards a carry. He kind of emerged from that group. And then also a chance to see some of the wide receivers in action and get everybody healthy. So I thought it was good for Maine, and obviously they're raring to go with the first practices this week and first game now less than a month away.
Let's talk a little bit more in depth about that offense. It starts certainly with a talented quarterback in Joe Fagiano, some receivers in Andre Miller and Devin Young, who are big play guys. And then you talked about that improved running game. Give us a little more breakdown on that offense.
Yeah, well, you're right. It does start with Joe Fagiano, who really is a dual threat guy. And what we've seen is that Maine is a better team when he runs the football. Now, he doesn't need to be carrying it 20 times a game. But to give them that threat in the main offense that he might take it and go, he had a couple of touchdowns, averaged 2 yards a carry in the spring season, but he's got the ability to get that big first down. And of course, that just keeps defenses honest. He's been an accurate passer who doesn't hurt himself. In the spring season, 8 touchdowns, just 1 interception, and averaged nearly 200 yards a game. He's also got a veteran offensive line up front led by Michael Geraci, guys like Matthias Stalso, Tyler Royal, Gunnar Dokos. So they know what they're doing. They'll buy him some time. And then a running game that has got a lot of young talent. I mentioned Freddie Brock, but guys like Tavian Banks, Elijah Barnwell ran well at times. And they brought in a transfer from Lafayette named John Gay, who's got some experience and might be a factor as well. As far as catching the ball, you mentioned all-conference selection Andre Miller from right nearby, Old Town, Maine, just one town over. He's got an NFL body, great hands, good speed, and the ability to run routes really well and get himself open. 21 catches, 348 yards, and 6 touchdowns in the spring. He's a big play guy for them. Devin Young back after missing the spring season, but also guys like Jacob Henney, a good possession receiver. Montego Moss, Randy Moss's son, may be a factor this fall as well. Michael Monios from Canada. They've got a lot of different guys who could factor in. And then a pretty tight, deep tight end unit led by Sean Bowman, who was a dependable go-to guy when they needed a first down last year.
Let's go to the other side of the ball, and Maine's black hole defense, everybody knows, and has built that reputation as an aggressive attacking defense. There were some struggles a little bit in the spring as far as the amount of yards and points allowed. Some of that got cleaned up, but there's certainly some guys back with Jamel Wiley and Adrian Otero. Talk a little bit about that defense.
Yeah, I think the team was disappointed in the way they played. They made some big stops, but they gave up a lot of yards in the spring, especially on the ground. And that's always been the strength of Maine football, that black hole defense and their ability to stop the run. And you're right, that'll begin with the guys up front led by Otero, Jamel Wiley. Kyrie Mann's had a really nice spring in his first time out there as a starter at defensive end. Also, you'll see possibly a big guy like Austin Chambers, a transfer from Brigham Young, Justin Sambu, John Costanza, Josh Leeson, the big part of that group. Maine has also turned to the transfer portal. It's been, for some teams, it's been a one-way thing, but Nick Charlton and his staff have looked to bring in some new guys, and I have to check the list because there are so many new names there. They brought in Ray Miller, a grad student at linebacker out of Campbell University, who has 179 career tackles. In the secondary, Aaron Mannery from Portland State joins the team. And also they get some guys back. Shaquille St. Lot, Catley Joseph, who were out in the spring, return. Veterans like Rich Carr, Fo Bazzi, the transfer from Maryland. And then at linebacker, Adrian Otero, Xavier Norris look to continue the play they had last year. So a lot of new faces. And I think I counted about a dozen guys that could factor into playing in the secondary for this team. So I think it's going to be a very competitive preseason for the Black Bears. Challenging those number ones and the number twos, seeing an opportunity to break that starting lineup.
Special teams always come into play. How does Maine look in the kicking and return game?
Well, again, a transfer may be a factor here. Maine just last week announced the addition of a brand new kicker, Vlad Rivas, out of Florida Atlantic University. In his career, 35 field goals, 114 PATs. And that's after they had a pretty good spring from Stetson transfer Johnny Messina. So there'll be a competition there. David Gelb is at least the starting punter going in, but they'd like a little more distance from him this year if he's to hang on to that role. He's been great at getting good hang time and allowing your coverage teams to get downfield, but they want to improve on that 36-yard average. Also counting on somebody, and maybe it's Rivas, to do a better job of kicking off and getting that ball deep downfield. He averaged better than 56 yards in his time at FAU. And that was an issue for Maine in the spring and also in the fall of 2019. They need to do a better job of kicking that ball into the end zone. Return game will be interesting. Andre Miller is always a threat back there. And I'll be curious to see if transfer John Gay becomes a part of that. He had pretty good success as a return man at Lafayette.
Maine is always competitive in the CAA race. Not that long ago, we were talking about a CAA championship and a deep run in the playoffs. What are some of the keys to success for this year's team?
I think it starts like it does for most teams at this level with staying healthy. If they can avoid injury, they've got a pretty strong group of number ones and a reasonably solid group of twos, but a couple big injuries here and there can derail a season pretty quickly for anybody. And that starts at the key positions. Joe Fagnano needs to stay healthy. Andre Miller needs to be out there all season. And on the defensive side, their go-to guys I would say Jamel Wiley has got to stay healthy. That's the key for them. And that linebacker core led by Adrian Otero. Avoiding penalties, too. Maine has gotten themselves in trouble in the last couple of seasons with costly penalties. They've been among the CAA leaders in penalty yards allowed per game. That'll be a focus in preseason for the staff to avoid, what coaches would think of as the unnecessary penalties. You don't mind penalties from aggressiveness, but you do mind the penalties at key situations in the game, those drive killers on offense and the drives that keep your defense on the field when you're out there on D.
All right, Rich, thanks so much for taking time with us and breaking down the Black Bears, and we look forward to seeing you as the season goes along.
Sounds great, Rob. We're looking forward to an exciting season in the best conference in America.
All right. Thank you very much.